What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the MLB Swing for the Fences show here on the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel. Talking today's a little bit of shorter slate here on this Tuesday, 9-game schedule. We'll see if they get all of those in or not. We got some weather concerns in the early games, East Coast and in your land in Chicago, Steve. But I am joined here by Mr. Steve Boyden, the one and only, joining me for his first MLB show of the season. Good to have you on, Steve. You got the Orioles hat on. They're playing some good ball early on this year. I can't say the same for my Rockies hat, which is why, this hat is like barely associated with the Colorado Rockies, even though it is. So I got to keep it on the down low there. But welcome to the show. And how is early season MLB treating you so far?
Yeah, this first week is always interesting for me. My transition from college basketball to MLB, and I'm not as dialed into spring training as you are, so I'm always leaning into you early in the season for that. But had a good first weekend. It was fun. I'm actually seeing your Rockies tonight, hopefully at Wrigley. Going to be at the game. It's going to be cold, but actually I had to close my my blinds here because the sun is out now in Chicago. I think with the wind today, the storms have kind of blown through quicker than we thought. So more optimistic about getting the game in tonight, both games here in Chicago.
Yeah, you said you've been, kind of leaning on me. Hopefully not too much yesterday. It turns out if your top stack of the night, mine was the Blue Jays, gets no hits, you're not going to have a very good night in the DFS street. So that was a little bit painful. Missed on a couple of pitchers as well. Was not a good night for me. I will say this, though. It is better to just kind of miss on everything all at once, right? Where it's like, had a ton of Blue Jays. It wouldn't have mattered who I pitched. I wasn't going to have a good night. So, first or last kind of mentality. And, I got to log off the baseball streets rather early last night. It happens from time to time. And certainly it wasn't the first, and also certainly will not be the last time. It's a rough night in the MLB DFS streets, but all you can do is try to bounce back, do better the next day, do better going forward, which certainly is the plan today. You mentioned going to that, you say Cubs game or White Sox game?
Going to Cubs tonight, Cubs Rockies.
Cubs game tonight, yeah. Hopefully the game plays. It will be very cold regardless. You mentioned sun is out. That's a good sign. I do think they will get those games in. It's going to be cold. We'll have to monitor the wind situation in both those Chicago games, right? Because that could kind of turn, could turn unplayable stacks into good stacks. It could turn bad pitching matchups into good ones. So the Chicago wind, certainly something to factor in. And then the other big weather scenario is the first game of the night, which I guess we can just go ahead and jump right into it. Detroit and the New York Mets. Been raining, it seems like, all day in New York, scheduled to pretty much rain all night. I saw someone posted it in our Discord that there's like a 2-hour window where they think they can play, which is a little odd to me, given that's not enough time to play a baseball game to begin with. And I don't know, looking at the radar, I kind of have my doubts on this Tigers-Mets game. I do think the most likely thing is it does get postponed, but it is, at least for now, scheduled to play. So I guess we'll talk about it. And yeah, because just in case it does play, we do have Adrian Hauser pitching for the Mets, Casey Mize pitching for the Detroit Tigers. It's both of these guys' first start of the year. Hauser, in my opinion, kind of nothing to write home about. A mediocre at best, kind of fifth starter type at the very best. For him. And then Casey Mize, on the other hand, I do think is worth talking about. A former top prospect for the Tigers. Kind of a rough start to his career, but Tigers, they kind of got something going, it seems like, with their pitching staff, pitching development. We saw Reese Olson pitch well yesterday. Jack Flaherty was awesome in his first Tigers start, and kind of think they might be turning around. Obviously, your guy, Tarek Skubal, I think he's a legitimate Cy Young candidate this year. So it does seem like they got a little bit something going with that pitching staff. And, I really wasn't planning to play Mize. He didn't make my article today just because I don't think this game's going to play. And even if it does start, I'd be worried that it could be delayed at some point. You lose your starting pitcher. But I will say I do have pretty high hope for Mize in general this season. Even if this game plays or starts, Steve, I'd be pretty hesitant to go to really anything in this game, given all the weather conditions. But Mize would be the one guy I would kind of like to play at 7,100. I don't really love the cheap pitching in general today. This game, Mets slight favorites, minus 130, 7.5 total. I guess we'll just talk about it as if it goes. Go ahead on Tigers and Mets.
Yeah, like if there was no weather in this game, I would definitely have Mize in my pool. But with the weather, it kind of seems to me like a wait and see. You know, he hasn't pitched in a while. I kind of want to see how he comes out. Did have a bit of struggle with walks in spring training, I saw. As far as bats, like if you want to go to bats, Hauser struggles against lefties. You know, he's been pretty good his entire career shutting down righties, but the lefties have gotten to him, especially for power. And this Tigers lineup has a couple of left-handed bats that we do like a bit. DC, Parker Meadows, Carpenter, Riley Green, guys like that I think are decent shots here to take. The issue with the weather, it's supposed to rain even more tomorrow, I think. So, like, I don't know. Do they just bag the whole series? Do they try to squeeze in a game? You never really know how they're going to deal with
this. Tonight is because the weather's not going to get any better. I'm guessing that's the reason.
Yeah. I mean, you never know how they're going to deal with it early in the season here, with it looking like a washout tomorrow as well. So I'm going to lean on the side of caution on this just because it's not like a standout spot. What I hope happens is that they play at least some of the game. Mize looks good, and then we can hop on him next start. It's kind of how I'm playing it here.
That makes sense to me. And if it does look like there's a clearing to get in, a 2-hour window, that would be enough for Mize, right? He's not going to pitch likely longer than if they get in 2 hours of play and Mize is still in the game, you probably got a pretty good score out of them already. Yeah. So we'll have to monitor. I'm not completely writing off Mize. I don't see going to any bats here regardless. I mean, even if it does play, it's going to be cold, wind blowing in. It's not a good hitting park anyway. So off of bats here, maybe can play some Casey Mize. Just got to pay attention to the weather. Obviously, we'll be on top of that in the RPS Discord. And, it's going to be one of those calls that we make real close to the start of the game, assuming that, it's not postponed by then. So we'll see on Tigers and Mets. I do think if you're, want to be cautious or whatever, just writing the game off entirely on a 9-game slate is certainly a fair enough way to go with Tigers and Mets.
Yeah.
Let's move to the 2 Chicago games. They both start at 7:40 Eastern time. They are the only 2 games in that window. First one we'll talk about is the Atlanta Braves, Chicago White Sox. Pretty interesting game here, I think. Right now, the total's sitting around 9. Braves with one of the higher team totals on the slate, around 5.3 runs projected. Chicago around 7 or 3.7 rather. We have Ronaldo Lopez, revenge start, if you want to call it that, against the Chicago White Sox. He's got some talent. He kind of earned the Braves starting role with a pretty good spring training. And honestly, going to the Braves is you got to have some interest, right? It's a team that really seems to develop everything pretty well, get a lot of players right. The White Sox are terrible. They really are. So, yeah, I think Ronaldo Lopez is interesting at 7,500, assuming this game is going to go off without a hitch. We'll see. And then Garrett Crochet on the other side of the ball got the opening day start for the White Sox. We were on him. He was fantastic in that start. Looked absolutely electric. I don't know if you got a chance to watch much of that game. 8 strikeouts, no walks. Big fastball from the left side, former top prospect. But he's not at least expected by the Vegas, lines makers to do well in this one with the Braves having the high team total. You understand it. Obviously, the Braves, one of the best offenses, if not the best in baseball, especially against lefties. Assuming this game does play, it is projected to have 15, 20-mile-per-hour winds straight out to center field, which obviously would negate, the 40 degrees that they're going to have to play in. So kind of all over the place on this game. If there was a reasonable matchup at all, I would be playing Crochet on this slate. I anticipate playing him a bunch early on this season. I don't know if I can do it against the Atlanta Braves, though. And I do think the Braves stack is firmly firmly in play. They're very expensive, and I don't know if I want to do it against a pitcher that I kind of really like in general in Garrett Crochet, but kind of see either way on that one. No real interest in many White Sox bats to me. Just not an offense I want to target right now. We'll throw it over to you, White Sox and Braves.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting game. Like you said, Lopez coming back to the White Sox. They kind of jerked him around between the rotation and the bullpen for a while. Braves are letting him start here. I actually kind of like him. I'm with you. I don't love a lot of the options under AK. I think he's probably my favorite one here. If he goes 5 innings, he probably gets the win too, which helps for the cheaper pitchers. The wind doesn't affect as much in that stadium just because it's so tall, but still, you can't argue with 15 to 20 mile an hour winds blowing out. The Braves are just so expensive in this spot on a slate, like you said, where we don't love a ton of the cheap pitchers. I'm with you on Crochet as far as the talent and the upside. But a 2-pitch pitcher against the Braves, not entirely sure how well it's going to work out. Coming off the good outing. I think the Braves are a great spot. I think what helps the Braves stack is the Murphy injury kind of makes the catcher spot cheaper because you get D'Arnaud at 3.6 and you can use an RC at 3.3 to kind of help balance out the expensive guys there if you want to go the full Braves stack. I have interest in Lopez as a pitcher here. When I am paying down, I do like him. And then Braves, of course, in play. It's also pretty humid here too, which helps. So despite it being cold, it is a good hitting spot for the Braves. As far as early April in Chicago, humid and wind blowing out, you're not really get much better here. Plus their implied team totals up over 6 now. So great spot for Braves. I think we've got them like between 8 and 20% owned on our sheet here. It's just, do we like the cheap pitching enough to go there? I think when we talk about the Cubs game, I have some thoughts as to how to fit the Braves.
Yeah, for me at least, I probably don't like the cheap pitching enough to jam in the Braves tonight, but that total keeps climbing. I mean, that's an indication, obviously, that that the wind's going to play a big effect in this game, and the market's trust in the Braves offense. Really good question here from Ninja the Great. Does Crochet give up stolen bases? He did give up a decent amount especially for a lefty coming up to the minor leagues. There's not a big sample size on him. He just hasn't thrown that many innings as a professional. I'll say this though, watching the game yesterday, there was a scenario. Ronald Acuna was on first base. The game was still close, and it would have been a scenario where I would have been almost certain that Acuna would have been running. I don't think he wanted to steal in the cold weather, right? He's got if you watch that game, he's got the mask up to his eyes, basically. He looked like he was freezing and miserable out there. He missed some time in spring training with like meniscus irritation. Yeah. And listen, maybe he'll run today. I think Acuna is. I kind of assume that's kind of the question, right? Because if you take the steals away from Acuna, the price does kind of get a little bit crazy if he's not going to run. My expectation would be he won't steal in this game, in this weather. I think they're just playing it cautious, and honestly, they don't really need to, right? They can probably score other ways with the loaded lineup that they have. So I did want to address that question. I think it's a pretty important one. Obviously,
BC, one last thing. We just got the Braves lineup. Trump's catching. So you get the even cheaper spot at catcher if you're stacking Braves.
He is very, very bad, but you do get the cheaper catcher.
But if you're full stacking them,
Yeah, absolutely. So wanted to address that with the Braves. I assume you're not on any White Sox here, Steve?
No, I'll be using some Lopez.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Let's go to the other Colorado game. It is the Cubs and the Rockies, who have, of course, got off to a terrible start. I saw a funny tweet after game one. It's like, eliminated. The Rockies have been eliminated from playoff contention. I don't think they needed to even play an inning for that to be the case. Not going to beat any team really in the NL West. Kyle Freeland on the mound for the Rockies. Javier Assad pitching for the Cubs. No interest in Freeland. Obviously, interest in either lineup, especially the Cubs. I think are a little bit interesting here. Depends on kind of the weather and the wind direction we get in this game. Right now, I'm seeing projected out to right field. Obviously, strong winds as we saw, or as is predicted in the Braves White Sox game. That can obviously change in a hurry in Chicago, so it is something to monitor. Obviously, the total, you can kind of monitor it that way and see which way it's moving, and for the most part, trust the market on that. I do think Javier Assad is somewhat interesting. I don't really like him much as a pitcher. I think he's a number 4 or 5 starter, kind of at best. But man, this Rockies lineup is brutal, especially obviously outside of Coors Field on the road. They really haven't done much so far this season, and Assad is cheap. He's 6,600. If you're trying to fit in a Braves stack or a Dodgers stack or getting big bats, some of the Yankees I like tonight, then yeah, I do think Assad makes some sense. Over to you, Assad, Freeland, Cubs, and Rockies. What do you got for us, Steve?
Yeah, I think Assad's going to end up being decently popular here as basically the best cheap option, especially if you're playing Braves or the more expensive stacks, like you said. Like I said at the top of the show, the weather's improving here. I think we actually get an on-time start, and I think we're going to be fine, which when I was talking to my friends last night, that was not the case. So, we'll take that. Interesting here because, like I said earlier, it's really humid. Like, we don't get 90+% humidity here in Chicago too often. Right now, I just rechecked the wind. It looks like it's going to be northwest, which is blowing basically from the left field pole to the right field pole directly across. So it's going to be a bump to left-handed bats pulling the ball out to right field, and it is humid. So we just saw what happened to Freeland in the first start, even though reports of his velocity were up in spring, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, he got lit up there. I think the Cubs are at least interesting here. I wish they were a bit cheaper across the board. I think their lineup actually just came out. But if that wind holds where it's not blowing in, but blowing out to right instead, I think the Cubs are interesting here. And not just because I'm going to the game. Because, the bullpen behind him is bad too. We've seen games kind of, get away from the Rockies already this season, and there's just a tier of really bad teams in this league. Even the White Sox that we just talked about, even if the starter's good, we saw the Braves score 5 runs off the bullpen yesterday. So, I think the Cubs are interesting here. I think people might be scared to click them because of the weather. It's going to be chilly, but if the wind's blowing out and it's humid, that kind of negates part of it there.
Any Cubs bats in particular that interest you against Freeland and the Rockies?
Yeah, so I've got the projected lineup here. I think the actual lineup just came out. I know that they're playing the cheap catcher, which is nice. I don't have the actual lineup in front of me right now. But Morel has gotten off to a really hot start to the season. I think he might be hitting cleanup again here. He's at 4,500 on DK there at third base. Really like Morel on the spot. Garrett Cooper's going to get the start at first base. He's cheap too. So depending on how you're playing your lineup, I think that there are guys that you can target here in the Cubs. But I think Morel is probably my favorite one there.
Yeah, I like Seiya Suzuki too. He's been not awesome so far, but he was red hot in the spring, and I do think he could be in for a big season. Obviously, swings or has the platoon advantage there against Kyle Freeland. I do think you can use lefties and righties against Freeland. I'm not too concerned about that. I don't expect him to go deep into this game anyway. So, yeah, I think the Cubs they didn't make my stack list, but might have to revisit that a little bit depending on the wind conditions in this game. Obviously, that weather is something that we're going to have to monitor all the way up to lock for Rockies and Cubs. Let's go to Toronto and Houston next. The remaining, 6 games are all safe for weather. Most of them, frankly, have some decent hitting conditions, either domes or out on the West Coast where 65 wind blowing out in most of those games. So it should be pretty good weather-wise, of course, outside of the 3 that we just talked about. But Toronto and Houston, Toronto Blue Jays looking to bounce back from really an embarrassing performance. Really let me down, Blue Jays, against Mr. Blanco yesterday. They'll get another tough matchup, a tougher matchup, I think, against Framber Valdez, who was pretty mediocre in his first start, but still not someone that I'm really looking to target against. He's an absolute ground ball wizard. Walked 6 Yankees in that opening day start. I'd be surprised if he reaches that total again the rest of the season. So yeah, I don't necessarily expect him to dominate. I don't love paying for Framber today. A couple pitchers, 2 or 3 pitchers I like better up in that range, but I'm not necessarily on the Blue Jays either, especially after yesterday's performance. Maybe they bounce back. I won't be paying to find out myself. They'll take on Jose Barrios, who looked pretty solid in that first opening game against Tampa Bay. Was pretty impressed by what he did. Of course, we saw the Astros. Your man Kyle Tucker with the big game double dong yesterday. Yainer Diaz also hit a couple of home runs, and this Astros lineup is dangerous. I will say, Barrios much better against right-handed hitters. Just Alvarez and Tucker, I believe, in the lineup. It looks like Caratini switch hitter in the lineup as well in the 9-hole. But yeah, Alvarez and Tucker look pretty awesome to me. Pretty low on the Blue Jays in general, even though I probably not going to play Valdez either. What are your thoughts here, Blue Jays and Astros?
Yeah, first of all, shout out to our guy Sully in the Discord. He had the 2-man Astros. He had Diaz and Tucker to ship the DraftKings live final seat.
Very nice. I didn't log in there yesterday. It was a rough night for me. I was out of the Discord.
Yeah, I asked him this morning, what's the secret? And he said, have your 2-man go for 4 bombs.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, Barrios, man, I feel like I try to attack him more than I should over the course of the season. Like you said, he's much better against righties. The Astros are always going to be a right-handed dominated lineup as far as the number of bats this season. Jordan and Tucker, obviously great against both sides. I noted in the playbook, DC, that the prices have come down since the start of the season on the Astros bats. Like we saw Jordan and Tucker over 6K to start the season. They're in the mid-5s now. Same with Altuve, and even Bregman's price is down a bit. So, you're getting, the prices come down a bit there. I don't love the spot for Houston, but, they can always crush. And then, yeah, Framber walking 6 guys is totally out of the ordinary. I feel like he does have these big games after everyone writes him off. I feel like that happens to him a couple times a year. I'm actually not on him here, so we'll see what happens. But, yeah, I mean, the Toronto, like I said in the chat here, the back half of the Toronto lineup, not very imposing. So wouldn't be surprised if he had a good game. He did throw 86 pitches, even though he was struggling. So, yeah, I don't mind Framber. He just didn't make my pool today. So this is a game where I don't have much on either side, but don't mind Houston on any slate.
Yeah, I'll be sticking to, if I go to Houston at all, to Alvarez and Kyle Tucker, the 2 lefties against Barrios. They are expensive though, and yeah, it's just as a one-offs when I don't love the cheap pitching, just kind of tough to fit those guys in. But I do think they're both very good plays, and hey, maybe you get the 2-man Astros mini stack could lead another person to a live final seed. Certainly would be my anticipation that it would be the 2 lefties most likely to do it against Jose Barrios. Let's move on to perhaps my favorite game on this slate. It is the Yankees and the Diamondbacks. Total sitting at 8.5. This one pretty much a straight pick 'em on the line between Nestor Cortez and Zach Gallen. This is the Diamond. I think actually both teams are playing their 6th game in a row, I believe. Mm-hmm. Neither of these teams have had a day off so far. And you do have some pretty tired bullpens. Ryan Nelson didn't make it very far yesterday. So the D-backs bullpen, which isn't very good anyway, in my opinion, is kind of worn out. Yankees as well. And then the big thing for me here, Steve, is Zach Gallen, I think, might be pitching through some stuff this season. So last year, obviously, the D-backs kind of unexpectedly made the World Series run. It led to a ton of innings for Zach Gallen. And kind of the first warning sign for him, I thought they were talking about kind of, he was interviewed early on in spring training saying, oh, they're going to peel back an inning here, an inning there to try to, I think he threw like 230 innings, something like that.
Yeah.
Obviously a lot of high stress ones in the playoff run as well. He really struggled this spring in terms of results. Not really struggled, but should have struggled that first outing against the horrible Colorado Rockies lineup. He did make it through 5 innings, didn't get crushed or anything, but had by far a career low strike percentage in that game. 23% zone percentage for Zach Gallen in that opening game against the Rockies, velocity down across the board. Pretty concerning for Gallen when you kind of add up all of the factors, right? Last year's innings, the quotes in spring training, the bad spring training results, the bad first start results, can't throw strikes, velocity down. And I think Zach Gallen might need a little time off, honestly, at this point. I don't think many people are going to play the Yankees here, right? I don't think many people are kind of looking that in depth at it. But I think they can do some damage here to Zach Gallen. The Yankees, I believe they're undefeated. They swept the Astros, beat the D-backs yesterday. Juan Soto kind of seems like has lit a little bit of a fire under that team. And I love the Yankees here as kind of a sneakier stack against a pitcher who is obviously a very big name, who I think isn't quite himself at the moment. So love the Yankees. I think you can even go to the bottom of the lineup here. Guys like Volpe, Cabrera, Austin Wells, swinging pretty good bats early. Obviously, you've got Soto, Judge, Rizzo, the big dogs in the middle of that lineup. And I kind of like this team. I don't know if we have a lineup yet. I haven't seen it. 1 through 9, assuming the lineup comes out like I expect it to. And honestly, on the other side, Nestor Cortez, not a guy that I'm afraid to target either. Diamondbacks obviously swinging some pretty good bats early on this season. So I'm in on the offenses on this game. Don't like the pitchers. And it is the Yankees side that I do prefer for a number of reasons. Long rant from me there on this one. We'll throw it to you, Yankees and D-backs.
Yeah, long, but it's exactly what I had in the playbook too. I'm on the same page here. I had the same thoughts on Gallen coming in. When you took his K prop under in the first game, I took that as well. Never really had a chance to get there. His expected ERA in that game was like 7, even though he skated through it. Obviously, a way different lineup here, a patient lineup too. So if he's not throwing strikes, the Yankees will spit on it. So
if he's throwing 23% zone percentage like he did in that first game, like he might not get out of the first inning. I mean,
yeah, Yankees are 5-0, and Judge has done absolutely nothing too. So this team's got even more upside. Pains me to say it. I bet on the Yankees like 3 out of the 5 games to start. Might bet on them again here. I think I like the game over though more than a side.
Yep.
This is my favorite game stack on the slate. Debating just stacking up this game for my main lineup here, DC, because on the D-back side, Nestor had that tough first. He settled down a bit, but extreme fly ball pitcher. I'm not sure if you mentioned, but the roof is going to be open today for the first time. It's like in the low 70s there. So, good hitting weather compared to what we started the slate with. And the D-backs do have righty power in this lineup. Eugenio Suarez, Lourdes Gurriel, Christian Walker, guys like that. We should see Blaze Alexander start, I assume. I think you probably know more about him at this point than I do, but he's
in the 2-hole tonight. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, we have cheap shortstop there, if you can't get up to Volpe. I like the full game stack here. I think both of us are more apt to leaning into these spots where we think that a pitcher isn't where he should be, and just kind of taking that risk. So I'm right there with you with Yankees. Love the spot. I think we get them low owned. I think it's the best weather spot on the whole slate. So I'm totally in on bats on both sides in this game. Not playing either pitcher at all. And I do think that Gallen's going to get some ownership in this spot too.
Yeah, I mean, even just to elaborate just a little bit on it, like even if Gallen is his, normal self in this game, which is possible, by the way. It's possible Gallen's totally fine. Just had a little bit of a slow start. Like, it's not like you're drawing dead, even if that is the case, right? They could still come through and hit Gallen either way. But if it's, it really is, there is something wrong with him, which I think is frankly the most likely thing. It's kind of a big edge because most people aren't looking that far into it. They're just seeing Zach Gallen in there. They know he's a big name, and they're kind of, I think most people moving on from the Yankees. I'm seeing them. I can pull up ownership here on Saber real quick on the Yankees. I think it's going to be pretty low for the most part. Yeah, I'm seeing no Yankees projected above 10%, and several of them. I mean, we'll see. Saber has Juan Soto at 4%, Rizzo at 5%, Volpe at 5%. I mean,
same on the Arizona side too. Yeah.
What's that?
Same deal on the Arizona side too.
Yeah. So I'm absolutely in on this game with you. It'll be certainly, it sounds like an important game for both of us. I do especially like the Yankees side, but I have no problem stacking it up against Nestor Cortez either. And like we mentioned, but does deserve another mention, two tired bullpens here. I think especially on the Arizona side, but really both of them. And especially also on the Arizona side, not a good bullpen to begin with. They lost their closer, Paul Sewald, already, so everybody kind of moves up a spot. And there's just not a lot of arms, I fear, in that pen. Could be, I think, a big day for the Yankees bats. Let's keep it moving to Boston and the Oakland A's. Man, this A's team just absolutely brutal right now. I don't know if you saw they made like 5 errors in the first 3 innings last night against the Red Sox. Just crazy stuff. Obviously, Alex Wood, starting pitcher for the A's, not really any good. He's not horrible. Like, he was their opening day starter, and I guess he's the best guy, but certainly nothing we need to fear. Obviously not the best park to hit in Oakland, but it is warm enough. We got some winds blowing out, humid, not as bad as it could be. And like the Red Sox, pretty strong lineup. I like most of their guys in this lineup. They got the conga line moving last night, right? I talked about that on the show. One of the few things I got right last night was the Red Sox stack against Boyle and this bullpen. I mean, it's just an awful bullpen. I think it'll be bottom 5 for sure in MLB, maybe even worse than that. Will the Athletics bullpen be? So, yeah, I think the Red Sox probably do something similar that they did last night and just get a whole bunch of base runners on base. Just got to get a big hit. Maybe you don't even need the home run, but certainly guys like Story, O'Neill, these right-handed bats against Wood look good. And then depending on what the lineup is, I think you can play probably most of the guys in the Red Sox lineup. Total's hitting around 4.3, so they should come in at, I think, somewhat modest ownership against Alex Wood. On the other side, I like Brian Bayo quite a bit. I've been talking about these Red Sox pitchers. They made all of them, it seemed like, made some real improvements to their arsenals and have performed really, really well. Now, Bayo was not dominant at all in his first start, so I guess you could express some concern that was against Seattle, but he does get the awesome matchup, of course, here against Oakland. Good park to pitch in. He did make one change. I hope it sticks. He ditched his 4-seam fastball. It's been by far his worst performing pitch over the last couple of seasons. He's obviously a young pitcher, just 24 years old. He didn't throw it a single time in that first start against Seattle. I think that would be a really positive change for it. Just went sinker, slider, changeup. And I said it yesterday when I was talking about Tanner Houck, who was my favorite expensive pitcher. You kind of got to trust the staff at this point. I mean, it's been every start. They've had 5 good starts in a row, the Red Sox have. And, until something changes, and especially in a good matchup, I'm willing to go back to it. Bayo, 8K on DraftKings. I think he's 8,800 on FanDuel. I like it. He's one of my 2 favorite pitchers on this slate. So I'm in on Bayo, in on the Red Sox. I think the Red Sox roll the A's once again tonight. What do you think between the Red Sox and the A's tonight?
Yeah, got to like Bayo here. I was with you on Houck last night, played him on my main lineup. Just going to keep running out arms against Oakland that are going to, throw 90 pitches. There's not much more to it. Like the 3 cheap arms that we've talked about that we like are facing Oakland, they're facing the White Sox, and they're facing the Rockies. I do like the Boston.
As good as it gets, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, right. You can't really ask for 3 better matchups than that, especially in this park. Was on Red Sox last night. Love seeing Duran back healthy, stealing bags. He's a really, really good player and awesome for DFS because he can get you there with steals. I think he stole 2 or 3 bags last night I took a flyer on him to lead the majors in steals. So seeing Ruiz get sent down, I've got some life there, DC.
Yeah, that helps. That helps a lot.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I'm in on this. I think that people might be afraid to go to them because their three best DFS options are all lefties, but I'm not really scared against Alex Wood against lefties. 4.7 xFIP against lefties last season, and like we said earlier, with I think it was the Rockies and the White Sox, the bullpen behind him is bad anyways. So you don't have to do it against Alex Wood. You're getting the 9 guaranteed at bats on the road, and Devers is the only guy up above 5K in this lineup. So this is a cheaper overall lineup than a couple of the other ones that we've talked about. I'm in on Red Sox. Going to continue to play them here. I actually like their team total over 4.5.
Me too.
I bet that.
I really like that. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm in on Red Sox. They've got cheap bats in the back half of the order if you need them. But yeah, Duran, Devers, O'Neill power bat at 4.3. I like him too. He's going to project well. Yeah, I'm all over the Red Sox here. They'll be in play for my main 5-man stack for sure. And then lots of Bayo. Yeah, as far as the under Yu Darvish, I think he's my favorite play. He's only 500 more than Lopez, and I feel like I know a little bit more about what I'm getting from Bayo than Ronaldo Lopez for only 500 more.
I think Lopez has just as much upside, but I feel way better about Bayo's floor than I do Lopez's.
Yeah,
for sure. So I'm with you on that. Our guy Beanair says, Vogelbach not stealing as many bags, so you're live on the Duran bet.
Yeah.
Mize DC, we talked about him. Yeah, if the game looks okay to play, which is certainly up for debate at the moment, we do like Casey Mize a little bit. He is, I think, our favorite play. I know my favorite play from that game. Worst pitcher on the slate. I think if you include the bullpen, I would just say the A's pitching staff, because I don't think Alex Wood going to go deep into this game. But yeah, there are a couple bad ones going for sure. So that is Boston and Oakland. A little bit of housekeeping stuff. I won't even use my own promo code today, Steve. Not after recommending the Blue Jays, who got no hit. So use promo code RPS15 today. I don't know. I don't need the referral code today. Don't use DC15. Use RPS15 just for today. Get you 15% off your first monthly, weekly payment, MLB or full package over at Run for Your Sports. Obviously, hit the like and subscribe. It does help us out. We are bringing you guys these shows free of charge 6 days a week. All we ask is a little like button. So hit that like button. We got a bunch of people watching. We do appreciate that, and that will unlock the plays of the day after we get through these 3 final games. With that, let's get to it. Cleveland and the Seattle Mariners. Up next, we've got a pretty good pitching matchup here between Shane Bieber and Luis Castillo. This one close to a toss-up as well. It is the Mariners who are slight favorites against the Guardians, sitting around minus 120 right now. Pretty low total in this one. No surprise, 2 good pitchers on the mound. Total sitting around 7. Shane Bieber was fantastic in that first start. One thing we certainly got right over at RPS.
Yeah.
Been one of the very best starts of the entire season so far that Shane Bieber delivered. And he was, it hasn't worked out on all these pitchers. I've obviously been talking about a lot of the spring training data, which, is all the data we have from this year to go on. So now that we've got some real stuff, we'll put that in the back burner pretty much starting, today and tomorrow. But Bieber velocity was up to 93. I wrote this in my DC's cheat sheet article that I do every day over on the site. The last time we saw Bieber throwing 93 plus was his run from 2019 to 2021 when he was arguably the top pitcher in baseball. I'm not expecting him to return to those heights, Boyden, but we've seen it not so long ago. Bieber be an absolute lights out strikeout pitcher. In fact, in that 2020 COVID shortened season, Bieber had the highest strikeout percentage of all time of any pitcher. Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, Strider last year. Bieber, number 1 on that list, single season strikeout percentage leader. Again, I don't think he's going to return to that form, but I do think he's closer to that pitcher than the pitcher we've seen in the last couple of years when he's gone through some injuries. And certainly that first start, results-wise, stuff-wise, kind of backed it up. I know McKenzie sucked last night, but I think Bieber puts on another big performance here. Great park to pitch in Seattle, a strikeout-prone Mariners lineup, and Bieber coming off, obviously, that dominant game against the A's. He threw 83 pitches. I think if things are going well, he could approach 100 today against the Mariners. Wouldn't surprise me at all to see him in the upper 90s for pitches. So Bieber, my number 1 pitcher tonight with a bullet. I don't think it's, honestly, at least for me, particularly close between he and anyone else. And considering just hitting the lock button on my own lineups on Bieber, expecting big things out of him tonight, frankly. Castillo, on the other hand, I'm less confident in. I certainly think he's in play at 9,400, but didn't look great in that first start. He also has a long history of kind of starting slow to start seasons before finding his form middle of the year, second half of the year. Velocity was down a little bit. Very few swings and misses in that start. So I am a little bit nervous about Castillo, especially with the Guardians' low strikeout percentage. I think they're sitting around 15% for the year at the moment. So I do think Castillo is safe, but I definitely prefer Bieber in this matchup. And Castillo more expensive than Bieber on DraftKings, just a little bit less on FanDuel. I'm on the Bieber side between these two. I think they'll have similar ownership. Let's throw it over to you, Steve. Seattle and Cleveland.
Yeah, basically all I needed to see from Bieber was the velocity to come back. He kind of battled through some injuries last year. I know you and I, when we saw his velocity way down to start last year, tried to attack him a couple times early. But yeah, him with the velo back in this spot in Seattle. Bieber's my favorite arm on the slate by far. Actually was going to talk to you about, since I played 20, I was thinking of going like over 50% Bieber, maybe up, towards like 75% Bieber in this spot.
Man, I like it. I'm all in on Bieber today.
Yeah, so it's a great spot for him. We get him under 9K. I just want to be way overweight on him in this spot. I'm not going to overreact too much to the bad Castillo start. Like him a lot long term. The Guardians matchup isn't the best strikeout wise, but we saw him get up to, I think it was 91 pitches in that first outing, something like that. I'll have to double check that, but 91 pitches for Castillo. So the duration's there. I think he's more of like, I'm going to include him in my 20 lineups, then I'm going to go out of my way to play him on my main type of play on this slate. So I will have some Castillo. I don't mind playing both in the same game here if you want, if you like the cheaper bats, but Bieber by far my favorite pitcher on this slate. He will be in my main lineup tonight.
Yeah, I do think Castillo one of the safer pitchers on this slate. I'm a little bit worried about the upside on the strikeouts, and yeah, like we've said a number of times now, we're both much higher on Shane Bieber today than we are Luis Castillo. I like Bayo straight up over Castillo as well, at least in terms of upside. So that's Cleveland and Seattle. A couple more games to talk about. We should have time at the end of the show. DFS Dom asking for favorite home run calls. We can do that. Favorite stacks. I know you already answered that in chat, but yeah, we can also do stacks at the end of the show. We'll do plays of the day as well. Should have time on a little bit shorter slate to go over all of that stuff. But before we do, let's get to these last two games on the slate. It is St. Louis and San Diego up next. I think might have a slight disagreement in this game. Sounds like we've been on the same page for the most part so far. We have Yu Darvish on the hill for the Padres. Miles Michaelis pitching for the Cardinals. Padres sitting around minus 135. Total sitting around 7.5. Obviously, not a great place to hit in San Diego. Won't be too cold or anything, but just not a great park in general for bats. Sounds like you are higher on Darvish than I am. I just kind of think Darvish is in decline. Wasn't great last year, and I kind of think he'll be around the same this year. I kind of see him as a, low to mid fours ERA type of pitcher. I know the results have been pretty decent so far against the Dodgers and the Giants. A little bit worried about the pitch count as well through 72 against the Dodgers and 78 against San Francisco through 5 innings. So I wouldn't expect him to go much longer than 85 or so. Could be enough against this Cardinals team. So I don't hate you, Darvish. I just like Bayo better personally. Bayo a little bit cheaper as well. And I also think maybe lower owned. So that's really the biggest reason I'm not on Darvish. Don't hate the play or anything like that. No interest in Michaelis. And I do think there's some decent one-off bats here in this one. You can run on Darvish, and lefties perform pretty well. So Victor Scott at 2K, I think, is a really interesting play down there in the 8-hole. I like Donovan Gorman a little bit. So I'm a little bit more on the Cardinals side, not going the full stack, but some of these one-off bats I do like. But we'll throw it over to you. Talk about Darvish. I know you've got some love there. Darvish, Michaelis, Padres, and Cardinals.
Yeah, Darvish more of a guy that's in the pool than a priority play for me, pretty much on most slates. Him down in the low 8s, he's only 200 more than Bayo. The projection that Captain has on him stood out to me. Like, he's got him projected for the same as Bieber. That gives me some interest because Captain was pretty good with the pitcher projections consistently last year. The pitch count does scare me, though. He's gone out twice. It was 72 and then 78 pitches. I just trust him at home at Petco. He's, like you said, he's not the strikeout artist that he once was, but still a talented mid-range arm that I'm going to more often than not have in my pool if I'm playing multiple lineups if he's around 8K. Not a guy that I'm super excited to jam in there, but a guy that I'm going to have in my pool playing 20 lineups, especially at home. I think my main interest in this game is the Padres bats against Michaelis. I know that you stacked against him in his first outing. Just not a guy that misses any bats at all. Not the best park, but it's early in the season. It's cold in a bunch of these games that we've talked about. I think the Padres are a decent place here. We actually just got their lineup just now. Looks pretty standard to me. So, yeah, I have interest in Padres bats here against Michaelis, and then Darvish in the pool, but not a priority play for me. I'm going to have 6-7 arms in my pool for 20 lineups, and Darvish, I'd probably say, is 5th or 6th for me.
That makes sense. Yeah, maybe not quite as high on Darvish as I thought you might be, but that makes total sense. And like I mentioned, I do like some of those lefties, especially with speed against your Darvish. Obviously, on lineups that you're not using him in. But yeah, Padres, I think, are one of the sneakier stacks against Michaelis, who, it's going to go he's already not good. I think it could even go south for him this season. I don't think he's, frankly, too long for this league. All right, last game of the night. It is the San Francisco Giants and Los Angeles Dodgers. Dodgers minus 145 favorites or so. Looks like going to be something of a bullpen game for the Dodgers. We could see Vesia, Yarbrough, and frankly probably a bunch of other arms pitching for the Dodgers. They'll go up against Logan Webb, who's obviously a very strong pitcher, not a guy that I pick on very often. He looked pretty solid in that first outing against San Diego. Obviously, the Dodgers, as good an offense as they are, can go off against anybody. They've been, of course, on fire to start the year. No surprise, given the talent that they've got in that lineup. I don't love picking on Logan Webb, so I'm not going to use many Dodgers. I don't think they're just so expensive against a good pitcher. Certainly no interest in Webb for me. And then I do think the Giants are a little bit sneaky against this Dodgers bullpen game, but a little bit lower on the list, maybe a 4th or 5th stack for me on this slate. What do you see here, Dodgers and Giants?
So the first thing that stood out to me with the Giants, I basically wanted to see how the manager change was going to impact the pinch hitting, right? Because Gabe Kapler, huge tinkerer, they go to Bob Melvin, more of an old school guy, going to probably stick with more of his starters. They basically only platooned Wade and Slater so far. So early in the season, I think this is something that we can kind of jump on in certain spots. It doesn't have to be tonight, but the Giants not having as much pinch hit risk as they have the last couple seasons, I think is something that I want to be early on.
It's also very nice. It like puts another team in play for stacking, right?
Right.
They're just like completely out of play.
And they're pretty cheap too. So probably not against the Dodgers here, but sometime in the next week they're going to get a good matchup where people are going to be like, they pinch hit all the time. But Gabe Kapler's in Miami now, so Bob Melvin is not going to pinch hit as much. So that's more of a note for future games. Don't really like any bats here. I guess it would be the Giants against. I think they said that Yarbrough is going to be the bulk guy here. But yeah, I'm not attacking Logan Webb and his ground ball rates. I put in the playbook like he's been really good against the Dodgers in his career and at Dodger Stadium. I've got it right here. 33 innings, 2.45 ERA at Dodger Stadium in his career. 208 and 2 starts last year, threw 97 pitches in first outing. Probably has the longest leash of any starter on this slate, maybe outside of Bieber. I think you can play him honestly at 8-3. Like it's a scary click, but I see under 15% for what was he like the Cy Young runner-up last year. More of a MME multiple lineup type play for sure. Wouldn't play him on a main, but Logan Webb at 8-3, probably one of the lower prices we're going to see on him all season on a slate where outside of Bieber, I don't really love a ton of guys. So I usually don't come on here and say that I'm playing 6 or 7 pitchers, but I don't really have a ton of conviction outside of Bieber. So I'm going to be playing a bunch of Bieber and then just kind of spreading out the rest of the other guys that I do have in play. But yeah, like I want to pull the trigger on Giants here in my 20 lineups, Giants bats. I'm just not sure if this is the spot to jump in.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think there are better places to go. I do think they are in play if you're playing 20. That's all 9 games. I haven't seen any updates on weather or anything like that, but at least for now, the games are still scheduled to go. Let's go we'll do top 3 stacks. We'll do a favorite kind of one-off home run call, and then we'll do plays of the day. So give you guys some goodies before we get off of this show. Top 3 stacks. I can go first, Steve, if you want to consider what yours might be. I'm pretty locked in on mine. Number 1, clearly going to be the New York Yankees. Talked about, I don't think Zach Gallen is right now. I think we're going to get them low owned. And if he looks like he did against the Rockies, I think we're going to see some real damage done from the Yankees bats against a tired bullpen as well. Boston Red Sox are my second stack against that terrible Oakland pitching staff, bad defense, and they got it going last night in Oakland. I think they can do the same thing tonight. And I will go, now that the weather is looking better in Chicago, I got to go with my Braves as my third option. I know they're expensive. I do think you can go to the bottom of the lineup here a little bit if you want to, assuming the wind holds and it keeps blowing out. I would expect them to have some success against the rookie pitcher, Garrett Crochet. So Yankees, Red Sox, Braves for me, your top 3 stacks, Steve.
Yeah, so just want to know, as we've been on the show, the Cubs team total has gone from 4-7 to 5-1. So that wind's probably turning towards the outfield. So I'm going to be more interested in the Cubs here. My top 3 are going to be Boston. I think Boston's 1. The Cubs are going to be 2. And I'll go with the Padres here. I think their team total is too low at 4.4. I bet their team total over. I'm going to be picking on Michaelis, I think, a lot this season. Not the best park, but I think that, they could be sneaky on this slate.
All right. I love it. Home run calls. I will go with Mr. Tyler O'Neill. I think he'll be hitting cleanup tonight against the Alex Wood and the Oakland A's bullpen. We know O'Neill has big power, can hit it out, but can hit it out of any park. So not as affected by the cavernous dimensions in the Oakland Coliseum. Tyler O'Neill, my home run call. You got a home run call for us, Steve?
Even better, we just got their lineup. He's hitting second. So maybe an extra at bat for you there. He gets his 7th at bat, of the game out there in Oakland. I'll go with a guy that I'm going to see tonight that I talked about earlier. Now that the wind's blowing out, I'll go with Chris Morel, off to a hot start to the season, 4,500 for the Cubs. He is hitting cleanup tonight. I'm going to watch Chris Morel go yard. I'm going to bet on his home run prop on the train up there after the show.
Get the Little League home run the other day, but you're hoping for the traditional kind tonight. We'll finish off with plays of the day. I got to go to the Yankees here, and I'm going to go with, assuming he's in the lineup, Mr. Austin Wells, swinging from the left side against Zach Gallen, catcher, tough position tonight. He's got a little bit of pop in that bat, and obviously fills the catcher position pretty well. So Austin Wells, my play of the day. Over to you, Steve, for your play of the day.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to a guy that I talked about earlier on Boston. I'm going to keep playing him while he's healthy, Jarren Duran. He had an awesome year last year before he got hurt, a slow end of the season. If he's going to be running like this, I think he's going to be a great DFS asset. He hits a bunch of doubles. It's a great ballpark for doubles out there in Oakland. At least a double and a steal tonight for Jarren Duran. 2 steals and a double for Duran tonight.
All right, a very specific projection there from Steve. You love to see it. That'll do it for the show. We appreciate you guys watching. Hit the like button, please, if you haven't done so on the way out. If you do want to sign up for RPS, use promo code DC15. We'll give it one shout today. DC15 for 15% off your first weekly or monthly payment. I believe it's an early slate tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think a bunch of early games. So I think we'll be on the air tomorrow morning. Either way, we will have a show tomorrow morning, one way or the other. And hopefully we'll see you guys then. For Steve Boyden, I am DC. We're out of here.